Have an effective campaign. The
Oversight Committee mission statement. We exist to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington takes from them is well spent.
more important. Have an effective campaign.
The committee will come to order. This is our first meeting of the TARP Financial Services and Bailouts of Public and Private Programs. I will begin by making an opening statement. I certainly appreciate the panel of witnesses being here and taking the opportunity to be here. Today's hearing is an opportunity to discuss growing concerns over the potential fiscal crisis looming for states and municipalities. Over the past 3 years, we've seen a culture arise where every institution claimed it was too big to fail. An all-too-eager president and all-too-compliant Congress kept putting taxpayers on the hook for trillions of dollars. Our budget...
Out of Enterprise Institute. Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for holding this hearing. This is a chance to conduct oversight, but it's also a chance to take stock of a critical and successful government intervention. The federal government saved two companies, GM and Chrysler, and probably an entire region of the country. I come from that region. There's a GM factory located east of Cleveland called Lordstown. In March 2009, the community of Lordstown, Ohio, was profiled by CBS News in this way. They said, quote, holding on for dear life, where 70% of the town's tax base came from the GM plant, according to the mayor. Just last month, the CBS News story profiled this community in a completely different light. Talked about it being jolted back to life by 4,000 pounds of steel.
An example of how a new federal agency can shed some of the old bureaucratic attitudes and develop ideas and approaches that serve both consumers and businesses. Mr. Chairman, the title of this hearing is Who Watches the Watchmen? The answer can be found in a single word: everyone. At the Consumer Agency, we aren't just talking about transparency and openness. We are living it right now. We are building an agency that involves American families, small banks, credit unions, and other financial services providers in our work from the ground up.
To have an effective campaign.
At that point, they chose to use some of their corporate resources to repay a debt that they had taken out from the Treasury.
You called it an investment. I think the American taxpayer saw it as a bailout, right? That was money that was supposed to be paid back, correct?
The money was invested in three forms. Some of it was in the form of preferred stock, some of it was in the form of common stock, and some of it was in the form of a debt instrument.
Okay, we got to move on. I've got another email clip that I want to have shown up here, if it could come up. This one, you said a few minutes ago that you had no specific knowledge of the small car. What's it called? The revised small car release. Look at the CC line up there that's highlighted in red. Who's Ron Bloom?
No, I didn't say that, Congressman. What I said is...
It's more important for
50%, 45% subsidy on Chinese exports to this country. What's more, in order to sell cars in China, you have to make them there, and then they make you move your parts factories there. That's what we have to fix. We don't have a free trade policy with China. We have a dumb trade policy.
It's an effective campaign. It is an effective government. It's more important for control. We have an effective campaign.
With them are a lot less complicated, a lot more reliable than the traditional internal combustion engine. So your constituents in a few years' time won't be looking for spare water pumps and all of the other things that typically go wrong with older cars. And also at the beginning of my...
3 years, we've seen a culture arise where every institution claimed it was too big to fail. An all-too-eager president and all-too-compliant Congress kept putting taxpayers on the hook for trillions of dollars. Our budget deficit has reached an all-time high, and the national debt is crippling our economy. Now we're facing the consequences of bad government policy in yet another way. state and municipal governments, who are preparing for aggregate budget shortfalls totaling roughly $125 billion this year, are struggling under a $1 trillion burden of unfunded pension liabilities, plummeting tax revenues, and an unforgiving bond market. We must understand the magnitude of this problem to avoid the reactionary, ad hoc decision-making that fueled the federal action of the 2008 financial crisis. This is not about one analyst. This is about the looming fiscal crisis in states and municipalities and the lack of transparency in their pension obligations. Let's be clear about this. The perfect storm is brewing. Already state and municipal governments are coming to Washington, hat in hand, expecting a federal bailout, like so many others. But the era of the bailout is over.
Effective government. Forget the people. Forget them.
Many states have budget gaps that are huge, including my own state, including the great state of California and others. So how in the world are they going to balance their budgets?
Well, nearly every state has requirements that they balance the budget, and there's always some room around that. But in most states, this will mean serious cutbacks in spending and or increase in taxes, which, again, this is not the sort of thing you want in the middle of a downturn. If we were in a situation where the economy were at normal levels of output, we're operating near 5% unemployment, you could say, okay, fine, the private sector will pick up the gap. But I don't think you credibly can tell that story given where the economy is today.
Well, I want to thank you for your testimony and just conclude by saying that state and local governments have eliminated 426,000 jobs since August 2008, and state budget cuts have eliminated additional jobs in the private sector. And in fact, at least 13 of 42 states who have released budget proposals for fiscal year 2012 have proposed layoffs and cuts in pay and benefits for public workers, and 8 states have proposed measures such as extending expiring tax surcharges, repealing tax credits or deductions, and broadening the base of some taxes and raising rates. And we have been called for a vote on that sort of depressing note. Thank you all for your testimony and for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you for yielding back. And with that, I recognize Mr. Ross for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief.
One way to do it, and that is print it up, because the government, the Federal Reserve, is the lender of last resort, and they're also the buyer of last resort. So they're printing. There's no way out of it. So then we have to turn our attention to hyperinflation and the death of fiat currencies. Talk to Peter about it, talk to Bob Chapman. We all know it's coming. It's just a matter of when. Peter thinks sooner rather than later.
Forget the people. Forget them.
At this point in our history, it would be in your best interest to just accept the way things are. This is the transformation of which Barack Hussein Obama spoke of. Hope and change is here now, and you must accept it. Or die.
I don't.